The all-for-one fight in My Hero Academia is probably one of the most heart-wrenching and exciting moments in the entire series so far. At the same time, even as a spoiled, up-to-date manga reader, I can say without a doubt that there is still more heart-wrenching moments to come. My Hero Aka is just that good. While not as brilliant with its themes as Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, or as representative of the human condition as Monster is, or even as deep an exploration of earnestness as Oregairu, My Hero Academia still easily finds itself in a collection of anime masterpieces. But even amongst all the brilliant writing in My Hero Academia, one of the fights I always find myself coming back to the most is All Might's fight against All for One, both due to its unprecedented stakes in the fight, but also its brilliant underlying narrative. So today I'll be analyzing not just what makes All Might's fight against All for One so great, but also how it displays the truest fiber of these characters. Un pour tous et tous pour un, all for one and one for all. This phrase, popularized by the 1844 classic The Three Musketeers, often understood as the idea that all members of a group are there to support the individual, just as much as the individual is also there to support the group. It is in the embodiment of this phrase that we see an idealized combination of two of the most basic interpretations of the point of a society, or really any kind of provisional government. Do we exist to serve the society around us? Or does society exist to serve us, the individual? This debate can be seen stretching throughout most of time. John F. Kennedy's famous inaugural address, "Do not ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." This speech was often viewed as a paradigm shift of people moving away from their self-serving views of the government, and at its heart, this speech was just another variation of that same phrase. And inside My Hero Academia, we see a foregoing of the original meaning of this phrase as well, when we see it split up into two separate parts. And it's in breaking up these two parts that we see the genesis of our story's biggest rivalry, as if to say on some level that there's no achievable balance between the two. The very notion of these two ideas is something that's just diametrically opposed and will always gravitate towards conflict. At least, it seems that way at first. But My Hero Academia is a show about what it means to be a hero. And it's from this notion that we have to recontextualize a bit of the meaning of both all for one and one for all. All for one in a literal sense in the show is just an ability that's given power by its ability to be passed on to all people, growing exponentially greater with every person it's been passed on to. But in a more literal or symbolic sense, all for one means a bit more. All Might is the number one hero amongst a world of heroes, because All Might represents what many view as the ultimate depiction of a hero, a person who is willing to sacrifice himself for the good of all people, one person for all. And this same idea flows over into All Might's conception of what it means to be the symbol of peace. All Might views that to have a safe society, people need a pillar, someone that they can look up to always save the day. And so All Might wants to become that person. All Might wants to become a single pillar that can reach out and give peace to all people. So in a lot of ways, All Might is a Christ-like figure, not that different from that of Superman, someone who is willing to sacrifice himself to save everyone. And the same logic can be used to glean insight into the character of All for One, in spite of his lack of presence in the story. All for One is a power to take powers from others for the individual's own use, but the same can also be said about the ideology for All for One as well. All for One, the person, views people as a means to an end, as a commodity to be used for his own purposes to make himself greater, or in All Might's own words,
"You steal, break them, manipulate and discard them. You scoff at innocent people who are just trying to lead happy lives."
And we can see this in the story as well. All for One took Shigaraki under his wing to raise him up to be a villain for the sole purpose of being able to mock All Might, because of his own personal vendetta. All for One continues to be the opposite of All Might, living by the view of making others sacrifice themselves for his own sake. These character traits are the backbone of what makes a strong contrasting villain dynamic, even if the heroes and villains in this case are both past their prime. But this also needs to be understood as the skeleton of what makes up the ongoing struggle of All for One's lineage. And if someone truly wants to understand the fight between All Might and All for One, this is something that they need to know. But with that out of the way, we can begin to shift more to focusing on the actual fight between these two titans.
Hello, boy! Come over here and scratch my itchy-witchy toesy-woesies.
No.
What? Get over here.
No, Antonio.
I control you.
You control nothing.
Get.
I am not your slave anymore, and I am not a boy. I am a man. See? I was transformed by the strong musky power of true love. I am now the Dayman.
What the hell is that?
You know what it is, bitch. Bang! 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 Bang!
次はお前の番だ。頑張ろうな、年寄り。
Goodbye. All for one. United States of Smash!
Bang!
There's no need to fear, because I'm here. These are the famous words given by All Might when he arrives on the scene to help people. And it's the first thing we hear him say at the beginning of the show. And it's also the very thing that inspires Midoriya to want to be a hero as a child. And it's on the back of this claim that All Might's able to proudly call himself the symbol of peace. Because we don't have to worry anymore now that All Might will take care of it. In this society with so many people who wish to do harm to others, and natural disasters causing wreckages, there's no need for people to worry, because All Might's here, and he'll always find a way to save them. And it's not just their life, but also their hearts. Because this is what a hero does. Because a real hero will always find a way to serve justice. And because of this, people are able to live happy, fulfilling lives. But is this true?
Wouldn't.
Of course he would. Just look at him. Square. The shape of evil.
He's just standing there, menacingly.
All Might's fight truly begins when he breaks into the League of Villains hideout to rescue Bakugo, which he does swiftly and proudly, and then turns to Shigaraki and tells him that the game's over, only for Shigaraki to reply with a quick speech about how the whole reason for starting this was just to reject All Might's vague notion of peace and justice. And it's at this point we're shown one of the most important scenes in the fight. A flashback of Shigaraki as a child, huddled up in an alley shaking, and the ever-planning All for One standing above him and holding out a hand and asking what the problem is. Didn't someone come to save you? Don't worry, I'm here. And it's at this point in the show we're seeing probably one of the biggest mockeries of All Might's position as the symbol of peace. All for One mockingly points out to the young, frightened child that no one has come to help him. In this world of heroes and billboards with All Might's face everywhere telling people that they don't need to be afraid, we still have poor Tamura Shigaraki hiding away in an alley being promised a hero that never comes. And instead, who is it that's able to go to help the child and tell him not to worry? The greatest villain the hero world has ever known. A scene made even more tragic with the knowledge given just before the start of the fight, when Shigaraki's hand was knocked off his face and he referred to it as father, matched up with imageries from other flashbacks of him being scared and alone surrounded by pools of blood as a child, cluing the audience in that in all likelihood, Shigaraki probably accidentally killed his parents when his power manifested as a child. In a society where stealing a purse labels someone as a villain by heroes, what chance is there for someone who's killed their parents to be helped by heroes? Bringing in the first question of validity of All Might being able to so proudly say that he's the symbol of peace and justice, if he can't even help an orphan child holed up in an alleyway desperately looking for help. Moving forward a bit, the fight takes another dynamic turn when All for One warps Tamura away and then consoles him on his failure, telling him to try again, and that everything he does for him, and telling him to think and plan because he still has so much more room to grow. He then switches to fighting All Might, and then mocks All Might for having to hold back to protect people. This is then matched with Bakugo being rescued by Midoriya and his classmates who are trying to help him be able to fight at his full power. While at the same time, All for One manipulates unconscious people in the League against their will, forcing them to leave the battle scene. From there, All for One puts out some sophistry about how All Might's view of justice is bad, by pointing out how many of his comrades All Might has hurt and broken to create his peace and justice, which All Might quickly rebukes by the fact of how in reality, all the people All for One calls comrades are nothing more but pawns to him, that he feels he can manipulate to his liking. All while All Might finally gets the first good hit in against All for One, and this epically ends episode 10 of this season. While I realize I quickly ran through a large part of the fight, I feel that it's hard to see the full scope of what's being said in these scenes until we get to the halfway point of the fight. Because in this exchange, Horikoshi does a brilliant job of expressing the critics of both these Titan characters through the dynamics of the fight. The midpoint of the fight ends with All Might finally landing a blow against All for One and breaking off his iron mask. But what leads us to this point makes it more significant. From the start of the fight, All for One has been mocking All Might's use of his powers and his ideals of justice, by pointing out that even with all his powers he's unable to combat him because he's so weighed down by his need to protect everyone around him. This point can be seen contrasted by All for One being able to get Shigaraki out of the battlefield because he has no problem ignoring the demands and the needs of the people around him to benefit his own self-interest, protecting Shigaraki. Living up to his name, All for One manipulates everyone around him, using force quirk activation on unconscious people to forcibly throw Shigaraki into a portal, and in some ways even injuring some of his own comrades. But this idea All for One points out about the weaknesses of All Might's virtues are quickly rebuked by the people around All Might, who are able to work together to help Bakugo because of the opportunity that All Might has been able to give them by protecting everyone. All for One's sophistry that All Might's justice is nothing more than a might is right mentality built on the bloodshed of others comes tumbling down by All Might pointing out that the only reason All for One's comrades shed so much blood is because All for One manipulates them like pawns to get what he wants. Just like we saw him do with the League of Villains right before that, and a complete 180 of how All Might's comrades come together to help him. And so, All for One's mask of sophistry breaks down and is tangibly reflected in the show as All Might smashes in the iron mask he was wearing, revealing All for One to have no face at all. Most likely to imply that when you get past his over-relativizing of morality to justify his actions, he has nothing left. Hey, that's kind of like postmodernists today who use moral relativism to claim victimhood, break laws, and protest things that aren't real.
But we told you he's an Article 4 free inhabitant, so he does not have to have a license. This is on recording.
You're gonna take the bag off.
No, I'm
You're
not.
gonna take the bag off.
No, I'm not.
Relax your...
Hey! You're raping me! This is rape! This is rape! This is rape!
I mean, fun cartoons that have no reflection on current world views and values and are only good for entertainment.
What are you wearing that for?
Oh, those pesky patriarchal societal demands were getting on my nerves.
Egg-led murderer! Hold your fire! This man isn't black! What?
Continuing on into the second half of the fight and the start of episode 11, the show continues to comment and deconstruct the idea of being a symbol of peace, and One for All's nature as a power. The fight kicks back up with a flashback of All Might talking about his origin, but let's hold off on that for now. After this, All for One mocks All Might for being so similar to his successor, baiting All Might into blindly punching him, and causing a reflection shock knocking All Might into the air, and causing him to lose hold of All for One. This reflection does a good job of, well, being a reflection of how beating on All for One out of anger, rather than the justice he actually fights for, ultimately only hurts him and his said justice. After this firm is a theme by Grand Tortilla, we switch to a scene of people looking on at the destruction of the fight, with a mixture of fear and others excited at their chance to skip out and going to work the next day. These images work in tandem with All for One's speech about the fragility of the hero society, and how all he has to do now is kill All Might. Even though this goes against what he told Shigaraki, his apprentice, that he would allow Shigaraki to be the one to finally kill All Might. Once more, a reflection of All for One's self-serving views that when it comes down to it, others are just pawns for him. But it also acts as a commentary, insulting All Might's views that having one person act as a symbol of peace creates an instability within society, because all it takes is for All Might to fail for everyone else to fall with him. This idea is further ground in by All for One revealing his true form to the world by forcing him to block another blast directed at a civilian, showing to the world that the idealized hero that everyone admired was built on a lie. All Might responds by showing that even if what people idealize about him is false, at his core he's still the symbol of peace, someone who will always be there to save the day. But All for One once again points out the flaw in All Might's thinking, by revealing to us and All Might that Shigaraki is the grandson of All Might's previous mentor. While not only being a great twist that thematically ties Midoriya's eventual rivalry with Shigaraki, it also reveals the weaknesses or faults within the idea of not only One for All, but also the symbol of peace. Because the successors for All for One have to look out for everyone collectively, they're unable to care or give special treatment to only one person. All Might's master Shimura Nana gave up her child to adoption and severed her connections because to look after her family would hinder her ability to look after everyone. And this isn't the first time the show has displayed this idea to us. In fact, this is an idea that's been displayed in almost every arc up to this point with All Might. All Might fails to make it to several of his classes because he uses up his hero form. The students in All Might almost both die at the USJ attack because All Might spent too much time saving cats and stopping petty crimes on his way to work. And the students he was put in charge of are injured and kidnapped due to him not being able to go to the training camp because he fears that it might create too much instability in the city if he was to leave. And when you get down to it, it can also be seen in his interactions with Midoriya as well. He spends little to no time training Midoriya, even though this was supposed to be his main job at this point. A comment even Tortilla Grande makes when they first meet him. And this lack of connections and individuation continues even further when we look at All Might as a character. If I was to ask who is All Might, I'm willing to bet most people would answer, well, he's the symbol of peace, instead of a more common response of his actual name. Like if I was to ask who is Batman, you'd probably just say Bruce Wayne, not he's the Dark Knight who hides in the shadows. We know All Might more by what he does more than we do about who he is or what he views or likes. And these same problems carry over into All Might's position of existing as a symbol of peace, in that he can only do so much. All Might isn't a god, he's not omniscient or omnipresent, he can only help the people who are right in front of him. And the hero society that he works so hard to help create has its own corruptions as well, like over-reliance on fame or endorsement, or letting abusive people like Endeavor be labeled as heroes. In much the same way that Americans can rally under the symbol of the American flag, but the government can only do so much to help someone when it has to look out for everyone in the country. People like Shigaraki will inevitably fall through the cracks of this hero-based society, and there are cracks everywhere. In fact, that's where most of the villains of our show come from. People who are wronged by the society in some way and are looking for a way to reform it, even if in reality that reform is just hurting them and everyone else. It's after this revelation All For One mockingly gives that we see All Might visibly and painfully shaken as he realizes how he's failed. But it's in this broken moment what we see isn't the hopelessness that All Might feared would happen if people were to see that he couldn't live up to the idea of the symbol of peace. Instead, what we see are all the people watching the fight, praying for his victory and cheering him on. And the comrades that All Might had gathered over the years, and even the people who disliked him, they come and support him and help the people in the surrounding area, so All Might won't have to die protecting someone else from another one of All For One's blast. And it's at this point we move on to the final phase of the fight, and the dynamic between One For All and All For One finally come to a close. All Might, emboldened quite literally by the people around him, and All For One come at each other with one final attack. And just before hitting each other, All For One laughs at All Might's declining power, and how he knows he no longer even possesses One For All, and mocks his inability to even handle or reprimand his own pupil Midoriya, as once again All For One and All Might clash fists, only for it to be revealed that this was another trick. All For One used his impact reversal quirk again, trying to force All Might to use the last of his power on a worthless attack, while All Might realizes that he's failed to properly raise Midoriya as his successor. And it's now that we can talk about the flashbacks that Toshinori's been having all throughout the fight, because these flashbacks have to be taken as a whole to be fully understood. And to do that, we have to understand that this line about
I must remember where I started
is a callback to the previous summer training camp arc with Midoriya in episode 4.
Remember where I came from.
Midoriya realizes that there's no way out of his fight with Muscular other than to beat him, and before going into the fight, Midoriya tells himself that he has to remember where he came from if he wants to win. So Midoriya charges at Muscular with 100% of his power, while thinking back to phrases All Might gave him about how a real hero will always find a way to serve justice, only to be trounced into the ground while pleading out apologies to All Might and his mom for failing to beat Muscular, and realizing that he's probably going to die here. That is, until Koda sprays Muscular with water, and a broken Midoriya turns in his mind that if he doesn't do something, Koda will die, and it's this fact that puts Midoriya over the edge and allows him to summon the power of the previous holders of One For All, and go to 1,000,000%. And it's this same idea of searching for his origin that we see Toshinori going through now. Throughout the episode, time and time again, we see Toshinori struggling to summon strength by remembering his origin. And each time he does, he's soon shown by All For One that he's already failed to live up to what he set out to be. He wanted to be a symbol of peace, but realizes that he can't help everyone. He wanted to save everyone with a smile, but in the end he wasn't strong enough to smile in the face of the tragedy of some people. But it's in this final moment, when realizing that he is yet to finish training Midoriya, that All Might is finally able to muster the power to push past his limits. Because in spite of the nature of devaluing individuation that All for One has at first glance, Toshinori realizes that he must keep on living for the sake of those important to him in his life. And it's in this plus ultra moment that we see the full totality of Toshinori's role as a character, and as a larger concept, the message of My Hero Academia as a whole. Toshinori's master Nana Shimura speaks saying, Did you catch that? At its core, his power is given to him by the collection of all these people for one reason, and that one reason being for the good of all. While it seems to have been lost in the complexity and harshness of life from time to time, at its core the power that resides in All Might and Midoriya and all the predecessors of One for All is the same power it was from the very beginning, way back in the 1844 book The Three Musketeers. One for all and all for one. Thematically. It's not literally the power to steal other people's power.
So, my theory is that the show will continue to blur these lines between heroes and villains, finally revealing that the quirk All for One and One for All are actually the same quirk.
Mr. Madison, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Looking back at it, this point has been hammered home to All Might throughout the whole fight. All Might wasn't able to save Bakugo by himself, but with the help of everyone working to help him, he was able to help everyone. Same goes for protecting the citizens. Without the help of Endeavor and the other heroes, All Might would have died stopping another attack aimed at a bystander. And another fun thing to note is that this struggle is the first to emphasize the fact that Midoriya didn't get hurt trying to help someone. I wonder if that has to do with the fact of being supported by his friends this time around, and not wearing the load of all of the world on his shoulders. And if this still sounds like I'm all just talking out of my butt, there's more evidence of this idea in the manga as well. So, minor spoiler warning. I'll give a cue to skip this if you're worried about being spoiled, but it's not that much of a spoiler to begin with anyway. So in the latest chapter of My Hero Academia 193 called Traces, Midoriya is visited by a dream of the original progenitor of One for All. And after seeing the origin of All for One's tyranny in the past, the original owner ends off saying that he had hoped to show Midoriya more, but this is all he can manage for right now. But then ends off telling him not to worry, because they've long since passed the point of singularity, and that he isn't alone. This scene reinforces the idea that I've been talking about for a while now in two ways. Right before this, the original possessor of One for All brings up that Midoriya is the ninth, so the comment about having long since passed the point of singularity points to the idea that he doesn't have to worry, because Midoriya doesn't have to face the coming problems on his own, because he's being supported by the previous holders of the power. But the comment about him not being alone is also cut with an image of Aoyama going to check on Midoriya to see if he's alright, showing us that Midoriya doesn't need to worry because he's being supported by his friends as well. This continues to show the theme of My Hero and its view on heroes, that a hero that can be a pillar and support everyone is nice, but it's only with the help of others that the pillar can maintain the support that it's there to give. And it's this new understanding of what it means to be a hero that's shown to us at the true end of the struggle against All for One, with us entering into a new paradigm, with Dad Might meeting Midoriya at the shore and giving him a hug, and promising from this point onward he will dedicate himself to raising Midoriya to be a good hero. From here on out, All Might exists as a hero to give his all for the individuals that he cares about in his life, not just society at large. All Might never truly be able to be an infallible symbol of peace, but what's important is that he was always right there to help people that needed saving when the time arose.
Well, hello there, Mary Jane. It's your friendly neighborhood rape man.
Here, use one of these.
I'm fine, thanks.
I thought you might appreciate something for your runny nose.
I don't have a runny nose.
We both know that you do.
What an unexpected delight! A calm senpai who cleverly handles his stubborn co-op.
Be gone, fuck!
You wanna be an Air Force Ranger! You wanna live a life of danger! You don't wanna get raped by strangers! Think of a big black man chasing you!
Well, he's not racist.
Well, if you want arms like mine, you just gotta follow my training program.
Wow, really? That'd be great, Sandy. I can see me now.
She totally pulled my face into her boobs. Whoa! Chio's boobs are soft as pillows. Chio's boobs smell like lilac and berries. Chio's boobs rule.
Oh yeah, that's good. Look at those delicious men, so perfect! I could spend the rest of my days watching them just like this.
I will restore the working man to his rightful glory. I will dismantle this oppressive establishment board by board. I will saw the tables of tyranny in half. Gnaw at the ankles of big business. Squidward will be so proud.
My slave diary. I didn't get a whooping today either. Joe even tried to set me up, but I was unable to seal the deal. My slave diary. Hope is an illusion, more cruel than any whip. I can't take it. Please spit on me, mistress. Anoint me in my own shame. I long to be the ground beneath your sharp heel. Everyone else gets punished. Why don't I?
Yeah. Good. You stronger and smarter than that. I shouldn't have to leave you with a milky booty hole. You know better. I know. Now what are we gonna do? Go to school and get a real job. That's right. Thank you, Rape Man! Don't thank me. Thank Rape.